The Square Ball Podcast.
Welcome to the show. Dan here from The Square Ball with Michael from The Square Ball and Ed Cowburn, designer extraordinaire. Is that a fair tag to put on you on your shoulders, Ed?
I'll take it.
Good stuff. This is our kit special. We're going to have a look about the design process of the Leeds United kits for this season, 23-24, and go through each of the individual kits one at a time. First, we should mention that the show is brought to you in association with Levi Solicitors. I'll throw to you, Michael, for this.
Will's Probate Conveyancing,
Yep.
for all that stuff.
10% discount on your
things.
10% discount on your legal fees. levisolicitors.co.uk/the Square Ball. Will's Probate Conveyancing. That commercial stuff, as you would call it. Yep.
And the business.
Dispute resolution.
Personal stuff. Do it all.
Plenty to check out on Levi's website. Professional as always. I hope you're more professional than that, Ed.
Yeah, weirdly enough, I actually had a dream about the big three the other week. I'm not even kidding. I woke up and I'd had a weird fever dream of designing something that had the big three. And yeah, it's probably... I don't know what kit that would have looked like.
Step away from the podcast is all we'll say. If you do want to engage with these shows, by the way, they are on your YouTube feed. They are going to be in your podcast feed as well. Might be worth checking these out on YouTube as well, because we have the kits with us. We've got some of the designed products that are on sale in the Leeds United shop. And you're the bloke who was responsible for designing them, is about the appropriate jump-off point for this, isn't it?
Yes. Dream come true.
Is it?
Yeah.
A nightmare, a burden to shoulder, is it? Because there is a lot of expectation around the kits, which is something I think we'll get into over the course of this discussion. So I suppose the obvious point to start with is, how did this come about? You've done a show with us before. You've explained what you do with Acid FC, but that is a members show, which our members can find, by the way. If you just search for Ed's name, Ed Cowburn, on our website. So Acid FC is a design house, your design house.
Yes.
And you design things.
Yeah, so I'd worked with Adidas on Red Star Paris kit back in 2019 for the 2020 season during COVID. So I'd got to know some of the guys at Adidas, and that was the time when Leeds went to Adidas. So I, obviously not missing an opportunity, said, if there's ever any chance, I'm a Leeds fan, I'd love to be involved, bear me in mind, and just left it at that. Didn't actually think that anything would potentially come of it, because generally you find with all the big manufacturers it's a very closed shop. It's same with football generally, isn't it? You'd love to get involved, but it's very hard to kind of get the door open. And so I just kind of sat quietly and got on with doing what I do, and I got a shout. So this was back in the first season being back in the Premier League.
So Bielsa's ninth season, finishing ninth season.
No, the season after, beginning of the season after. So it was about October, the second season.
Right.
And basically, just had a shout from the guys at Adidas saying, we're coming up to the time when, the brief comes through and we start working on the Leeds kits. I'd love to get your thoughts. He said you'd be up for it. No guarantees. Let's have a chat, put your ideas together, and let's see where it goes. So I went off and did my research and did what I think was the right angle to go. So at the same time, how it works is the club will sit down and internally decide on what they think are the right angles that they want to touch for each of the kits. And I hadn't seen any of that. I didn't know, what they were doing. So I just did my own thing. And they then had a call in November, and Adidas brought me on the call after they'd been briefed by the club. And it just so happens we matched. So the club wanted to do something about peacocks, and I came on the call and went, I'd like to do something about peacocks. So it was a lot of stars aligning and serendipity, and from there it was a case of, right, okay, we need to bring you in. And so I worked with Adidas for 3 months to produce the final artwork.
So what's involved in working with Adidas for 3 months? What takes place over that 3-month process? So
first of all, because it was a bit, it felt like it was kind of a bit of a different way for them to work. Is when we went through, what I'd done and got a feedback on the sort of ideas generally, and what we could and couldn't do. So you're starting into what templates are they using, what are the manufacturing sort of guidelines and things that you can't do. So from a production point of view, cost wise, colours, which panels, what you can do with stripes, what you can't. So you're already seeing, those templates that were used in the World Cup effectively as the kind of base template. So, on my deck, I was like, let's do different things with the stripes, put them in different places. I didn't know, where they would be. And then it's also, I think this is the one that was sort of most interesting for me, was they have to match all the guidelines across football. So not just the Premier League guidelines, which says this is how big a sponsor is, this is what, where it's got to be placed, but actually UEFA guidelines. So, at the time we were 9th the season before. And so we had to look at what if we played in European competition, which have a lot more stringent set of rules. And one of those rules is, and we'll come into this as we go through the kits, but one of the rules is you're not allowed to put anything on the front of a shirt that looks like a thing. I mean, that sounds really bizarre, right?
Well, a perfect example is like they've said you can't have a map on, for example, because I know some teams have put maps of the area.
Yeah, so the Inter Milan kit from, I think, last year, 2 years ago, it was like mint colour and it had the globe in it. And then when they played in the Champions League, they had to wear one that was just plain coloured because you're not allowed to have a thing. I think partly because I don't really know the reason, actually.
I suppose it's partly kind of
political.
Yeah, I was going to say because you might put Stalin's face on there, or a map of it. Like, for example, if you were designing a Ukrainian kit and you put Crimea on there to make a statement, I think it's probably to avoid all that because they want to be apolitical.
It is. But I straight away I was like, well, how far can we go with that? What are we allowed to do? Bearing in mind that this is going to be peacock themes. Like, where do we draw the line? What are we allowed? So. And then it becomes very, very grey. It's, let's do the designs. Then, the guys at Adidas actually put it into UEFA and they will, have to get final sign off. So, some of the early ideas, iterations that we had were basically screwed up because, there was too much, it was too in your face. And I think you probably, you can sort of understand where we got to with the third kind of with that in mind, because we couldn't just put really obvious peacock Leeds United references that you kind of love to do. I think we spoke about this last time we were on. It's like, you kind of want to put things on kits that have relevance, that show history, that show understanding, that allow fans to feel like they've got something completely unique. Unfortunately, the rules say that you kind of can't. So
presumably by the time this got to UEFA, they were like having a little chuckle looking at it as an 18th. God, I won't worry, lads. You're not going to be bothering our competitions. Do what you want with these kids.
We'll definitely touch on some of those ups and downs of the journey that I've had with this. But absolutely, it's kind of frustrating that you think actually I could have done what would I have done differently if we knew that. But
just going back to that initial sort of agreement, that call that you come on with Leeds United and you realise the stars are aligning. How does that feel then both from a Leeds fan point of view, but also from a designer's point of view? I guess there's kind of, because you see loads of people designing Leeds kits, like, graphic designers do badges, kits, that sort of thing, fantasy kits. And then actually, this actually lands in your lap and you get to do it. You're the guy who gets to do it. Is there kind of party that goes, oh shit?
I mean, I'm getting goosebumps now, I'll be honest, like thinking about what I've achieved and what this means.
Yeah.
You're kind of going down in the history of the club, and it's like it is back to being 10 or 11 and colouring kits, watching.
Because that's all I used to do. I think we said this before. I used to just sit there and draw kits, and I used to always want Leeds to have Adidas as a supplier. Because the stripes were always easy to draw.
I mean, we spoke about it. It's like, oh, I'd love to do that. I never in a million years actually kind of took myself to that moment. So, that moment was, I still didn't believe it. It took a long time, and New Year's was starting to actually, get into it, and the templates are starting to be, delivered, so that I'm working on the right assets and all this kind of stuff. Is like, actually, holy shit, this is actually happening.
Yeah.
And then of course, you go through the process, and it becomes, very much a very focused design job, and then then you get to the end and it goes. So, it was signed off in that January. So I think when you spoke to Angus at the beginning of last season, he was talking about sort of, he's seen the kits are on his desk. And it's 18 months ago before a ball is kicked with that kit. They're done. So I've sat on these designs and...
So Bielsa was still here when these kits were basically signed off?
Yes.
Yeah. That's interesting, isn't it? Looking at how long it takes.
Yeah.
Feels like a lifetime.
So, kind of, I wonder what my mood would have been in had I been designing last, sort of November to January, over the World Cup and when Jesse was around. I think it certainly felt, I think hopefully it comes across a little bit. There's a lot of kind of, I think, joy and hope and, happiness kind of with these kits. And maybe that's partly because of, Bielsa. I'd like to think so.
So why the peacocks then? Because Reevy hated birds, thought was superstitious about them, and it's been this theme that's run through this whole design, and the club have picked it up and really run with it this year. I mean, for what it's worth, I quite like it because I like it. I think it really taps into our heritage that, got the pub, it's the old peacock ground. But when it was on the badge, the bird design was not a particularly happy time for Leeds.
It wasn't the happiest time, but I wanted something that felt like it was unique visually to the club that I could hang a lot on. So the story of the Peacock Pub is really good for that. It's 1826, I want to say, that the original pub was there, changed name in 48, ground, I think, in 1870 something. It's been there before the club existed. And visually, certainly there's plenty I could hang my hat on. And I love this idea that I could do one concept and it could go through all three kits. That's never been done before. So I wanted to take that risk and go, let's see how many ways we can skin a peacock. Whereas, normally you go, we've got one idea and we'll just do that for the home kit. But to my knowledge, and I've done a lot of research, I don't think any club in the world has ever done that. And that idea was also part of Leeds' position in kit culture. So, speaking of Don, was it 1973, Admiral came along, and they were the first brand to offer clubs the chance to receive money for just having their badge on the kit. That's kind of how the original, replica kits happened. And I doing some research, and that money would go into the player pot. That was how it was done at the time. And then Admiral could sell replica kids kits out on mail order. And because Leeds were doing so well, they were one of the first, but also sold really, really well, and ended up with, that's probably why we've got so many fans, globally, because they got a Leeds kit because they were the first one that were available. And so I kind of thought, well, I want that same marker in the sand of going, it's 50 years later, one concept for everything. And of course, back to that point about, did I ever think I could do this? Well, it's like, if I was going to do it, I'm putting everything into it and really trying to make sure this is something that's really memorable and, talked about. And, I just have to hope that the players performing it now. So,
what are your fears then? Because I talked about that, the getting the call, getting the nod, you're doing it. I said the designer part of you goes, yes, I get to do my design dream. But the human part of you, the Leeds fan part of you goes, I know how unforgiving football fans are about football kits. And we know there's a cycle every year where people see the kits and they go, I like that one, hate that one, person who designed it's a dickhead. What have they done that for? Why have they trashed our heritage? No one wears this. What are they thinking of? And then over time, if you start winning in it, people go, I like that kit now, actually. It's a cult classic.
Oh, it's really, really frightening. I saw a little bit of it when I did the Red Star stuff, but thankfully I can't speak French, so it kind of, a lot of it went over my head. I got a friend of mine to translate some of it, and it wasn't very pleasant. I just have to know that it's coming from the right place and try and stay strong. And certainly, some of the responses are negative because that's social media and it's kind of obvious. And I was able to have a beer and come to terms with it and find the funny side. And then, you know, I was away at the time when the third came out, for example, and I think I messaged you at the time, you know, that it wasn't a particularly nice place to be, you know, reading some of it. And, you know, everyone always says, you know, don't read social media, you know, it's not a fair reflection of what people think. But it you know, matters. You know, it's a huge responsibility. And, you know, I genuinely, and if there's anything that comes out of this, I genuinely was designing it with the hope that people like them.
Yeah.
But it's like no other job, I think, in design. You know, you're designing something that has to hit every single demographic. I can't think of another job where they get, you know, most jobs you'd be like, okay, here's the personas of the type of people that are going to wear this, or, you know, you're designing for. Whereas this is like from everybody from, you know, a toddler who's introduced by the parents, all the way through to, you know, grandparents and great grandparents who have seen, and then, you know, all the history. And so my view on it was always trying to go, well, to somebody, this is their first kit. You remember that moment when, you know, you got your first kit for Christmas. You know, mine was, I think, 1985 kit. In Bed was my favourite player. You know, I remember opening it under the Christmas tree and like full kit. Can we go outside and play football? You know, and that feeling never leaves me. And I still get that kind of that goosebump feeling when the new kits come out. And I think that's why so many people have such a strong opinion, because that's how we were all brought up, and we all then have our kit that means the most to us. It's like, I often compare it to kind of like music. Is there's no surprise that the music that you listen to as a teenager tends to be the music that you listen to for the rest of your life, because that's when you grew up and that's when things became significant. And whilst, you know, sort of maybe our age, you know, that's probably where I would get the most stick, I guess. Just try and remember what it was like. And I think you've said it before, some of these, it's not for you. You know, it is for the kids. And if you like it, great. But your kids are going to be Leeds fans longer than we are now, hopefully. So...
Poor bastards.
I think it's a strange thing. 'Cause you're designing a piece of fashion wear essentially, but it's normally with a piece of, like, if the Acid FC stuff you do generally, some of the other stuff that's been in the club shop, some people have looked at it. If it's not for you, it's not for you. Fine, you sort of take it or leave it. Whereas the kit, because it's worn by the people you're watching 40, 50 times a season, whether you like it or you're interested in it, you're seeing it anyway. So you kind of, everyone is forced to form an opinion on it. And it, like as you say, it goes from, you know, 5-year-olds to 95-year-olds does that. So it's a very hard thing to do. Yeah,
it's the heritage aspect, isn't it, as well? Like you say, it taps into a whole lifetime of memories, because those kits you were describing then, I started thinking of the Umbro kit with the central badge, with the diagonals, and then the Burton kits that would just be...
I love that kit.
Around that time. Yeah, exactly. That's the one that I always go to, and that was, I can remember pictures of me in that at my grandparents' house, you know, around Christmas or something like that, back in the mid-80s, and that's the one that sticks with me.
Do you think, weirdly though, now, if that kit was brought out, people would go, it's just an Umbro template? They've just given us one of the template shirts.
Because there were loads.
I was going to say other people had the exact same shirt, didn't they, in different colours.
I don't know. Is it something to do with the unique position we are in history, with like how social media works, where there's so much noise? Because we are bombarded with noise like 24/7, aren't we? So people look for anchors like the heritage aspect of kits, because it reminds them of a time, I don't know, when they were younger, things were simpler. So they demand designs that are faithful to the heritage and all the stuff that's gone before. But the funny thing is, it only adds to the noise.
It's not easy to design, you know, under those circumstances, because I'm constantly, as I'm designing as well, you know, thinking, has someone already done this? Have I missed somebody that's designed a kit that looks like this? And then when it comes out, I haven't seen it. And so it's not been inspired by or copied. You know, that's one of the greatest fears, I think, you know, for kind of contemporary design is that happens. Thankfully, you know, I think, you know, that hasn't happened here. But I've seen a couple that, you know, have been referenced, you know, that, oh yeah, I did a peacock thing, and it's like, yeah, you know, I think that's just always going to happen now. yeah, it's very noisy out there, you know. But I kind of relish it. I like the fact that, you know, lots of people have got an interest in this. It is totally subjective. I'm okay with people not liking it. I just hopefully this gives us a chance to kind of really explain some of it, and you know, hold my hands up and say this was, you know, this was the process that we did, and you know, if you've got an issue with it, at least you now know what it is, and you can have a subjective opinion about, you know, whether you're allowed not to like it. I'm cool with that. It's okay, just as long as we can have a reasonable chat about it. That's okay. It'll change next season.
We're going on the attack very soon, Ed. No, I was going to say, well, you were telling us before we started recording that you designed the kits in order of like home, away, third. So we'll break off and we'll do a little deep dive into each of the kits as we go, if that's all right. But before we get round to dealing with them one kit at a time, can you just tell us what it was like when you saw the first sample? So when did you see the first samples, and then what does that feel like as well?
So the sign off was in January. Then I think it was about 2 or 3 months later. So that turbulent season where obviously, you know, Bielsa had gone. It was around the end of that season that I then, you know, got taken into Ellen Road, and you know, blinds closed, and you know, hold alls brought out, and yes, there was quite a moment.
Is it genuinely quite like secretive in that regard? Because it has to be, doesn't it?
It has to be, and it all the way up through to, you know, launch. Photography being done. You know, I was lucky enough to be up at Thorpe Arch for when we did a lot of the photography for the third. And, you know, typical fan, you know, kind of wanted a couple of photos with some players and stuff. And, you know, it's like, these aren't going anywhere. You know, who are you? Just checking. And it's like, no, I designed it. I want a picture with Willie Nonto. You know, so yeah, they've got to be really secretive. Because also you kind of want to be able to put out the launch, you know, collateral, the films, and, you know, a lot of effort went into that this season, and, you know, credit to the people involved. You know, they want that first hit, and, you know, having them leaked, which they did, you know, and they inevitably do. I don't know a single club that's kind of managed to keep a lid on it, you know, completely. But like the third, for example, there was an image that was obviously of an infant-sized one, like a toddler-sized one. So all the print looked all kind of the wrong size and everything else, and, you know, that was out there, and it's like, what can you do about that? But I suppose all we could go is, you just want to be able to show it in the way it's supposed to be, on players, with a full kit, how, you know, and be able to tell some of the story. So
when you first saw the sample, then you're like,
yeah,
I made that.
Oh yeah, I whatever I'm designing, I love designing products, and I love that first moment where you see stuff. I mean, I'm very critical. I try and, you know, look at it and go, oh, is this the final version? Are we changing anything about that? You know, even at that point, I think it's like, you know, tonally, what are we doing with, you know, the badges and things like that? There was a few little tweaks that needs to be done, but yeah, it's an amazing feeling. And then you roll it out into, you know, well, when are they first going to wear it? And so, you know, all the way through last season, you know, I'm like, sort of, if they don't get relegated, you know, you obviously covered this, they were going to go to the States and play, you know, some Premier League games, and I was like, that's good. I'd like that. You know, it'd be amazing to have them, you know, rolling out, playing against Scum, you know, on, you know, in the States. And then it turned out that they did play Man United, you know, in Oslo. But it was too expensive for me to get out there. So I really wanted to go, but I went to York.
When you're getting the samples, who else is in the room at that point? Because I'm intrigued. Is it like commercial people there? Is Radrazani there? Is it Angus there? Is it a case
of Radrazani's son there?
Exactly. Giving it, well, designer. It's not what I'd have done. If you want to speak to a proper designer.
Yeah, I mean, there's a group of people that I think that you try and keep it down to not too many people involved directly with Adidas, so that Adidas can share, you know, samples. So, but it will be, you know, some of the people on the brand side, commercial and retail, all, you know, double checking, you know, things as they come through. So, yes, it's the senior guys.
Right then, Ed, we will break off there then, and we'll come back with another episode. So look out for this in video and audio feed, where we'll get into the home kit first. What inspired it? Went for white, yellow, and blue. Good choice, I thought.
Thank you.
And we'll do that next.
The Square Ball Podcast.